Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and today you guys are probably expecting some good tea because I said on my Facebook page I was starting a little late because there was a story that just dropped. And man, Whoopi Goldberg says some crazy stuff on The View. And we've talked about Whoopi. They've been on another level. So there was a story that dropped because there was a school district that decided that this 8th grade class, there's this book called Moss, that they wanted to take it out. And based off the conversations with people who were making the decisions, they're talking about nudity and other things, and they thought maybe there'd be other books that could cover the subjects of the Holocaust in a better way. And they said, in the discussion, they're like, well, if we can't find something else, are going to put it back in? And someone said, maybe, but we might move on from the module. That's someone else would know better. But anyway, the discussion isn't that we are banning it, like no one can read this book. It's like we are going to try to find something that we feel would be better for the curriculum. I've never read Moss. We're definitely covering different stuff while covering the Holocaust when I was in school. So anyway, it was reported by New York Times and other people that people were banning this book. And so The View was talking about it today, and Whoopi Goldberg said that the Holocaust wasn't about race. She just said it was about treating humans badly, and it was basically white on white crime. And I'm paraphrasing. I have the clip. I will play it for you guys. As much as I can, because sometimes ABC tries to flag stuff, even though like they put snippets out. Obviously, they make a show and say controversial things to get people talking. I don't understand why people are so touchy about some of their stuff. Maybe they just, I don't know, expect us to just shut up and listen and affirm their dumb things that they say and not criticize. But hey, oh my gosh. And it's funny when you look at it because you can see the other women who are leftists or pretty left, like the poll panel's pretty. Anna Navarro is not like on the right, she's left. She's flew the coop. All these people are super like just trying to affirm this identity pretty much that they have going on with the show, this narrative. But all of them are like kind of like pushing back on her. And Whoopi's like, no, it's just about bad people being bad to each other. And the way she's explaining it, I saw Ben Shapiro's thread. That's when I first saw it. I was like, hold on a second. I started Googling and stuff, looking for stuff. It's obviously not just a race issue, like of a thing about treating humanity badly. It's like, why are they doing that? And if you're going to say it that way, can't we just say all racism and prejudiceness is about people deciding to be cruel to one another for whatever justifications? And I guess I would agree with that, but I don't think she would agree with that. That's not their logic. So it really just invalidates Jews as a minority status. So it was bonkers, and you could see, and they started playing music in the background, like, let's wrap this up. And they had to go. I'm sure they did have to go to commercial break, but they were probably like, incoming, like we need to wrap this, like we're going down a bad route. Like it was really bizarre. So woo. And you guys know they've been saying some crazy stuff lately, but this is really crazy. And so I wanted to talk about this mob situation anyway, because they are, I don't know in what world people have not wanted to discuss Holocaust, Civil War, slavery, all those things. We just don't want this hyper racist perspective that they're trying to shove on people today. Like you are supposed to atone for the sins that you did not commit and feel a certain way about things. Like they're going to make you feel awkward anyway, but people are trying to make you feel things that are unjustifiable for your children. So it's a lot deeper than what they are trying to make and paint it as. But on the flip side, To Kill a Mockingbird was banned from a school in Washington State, and or they took it off the curriculum. I don't know if the school board was removing a book. I don't know if banned is probably not, I don't know if it's the right term to use, but Jake Tapper tweeted about it, and people like in the comments, you could tell were like, oh, those darn Republicans. But if you looked into the story, a Black woman doesn't want the book there because the author is white and the perspective of the girl telling the story is white, and they don't feel that it's appropriate for her to be telling a story regarding these issues, as if white people didn't exist back in all those bad times and didn't have thoughts and feelings about that. And so knowing that Atticus Finch was like her father, in the story was rated as like on a top list of like 50, it was top 50 or top 100 heroes or something in cinema and film, and or something along those lines. He very heroic character just overall in literature, in film. The book is obviously very famous, the movie is very famous, and they don't want a white person to be able to tell stories anymore. See, people keep talking about progressivism. This isn't progressive. It's very, very regressive. Very regressive. So we're going to talk about all this, and I don't know what was Jake Tapper's aim in posting it, and maybe he didn't think too deeply on it. But it definitely seemed like it was I don't know, how could you not know that it was going to make people assume that this wasn't just another thing that Republicans were doing? So I didn't feel that was he didn't tweet it himself to be like, oh, those darn Republicans. And that is everyone else's fault for making those assumptions, I guess. And he could just be tweeting it as like interesting commentary. But I don't know. There could have been some kind of clarification. But before we jump into everything, I'm excited and raring ready to go today. I just want to cover a few things. Of course, go to blackteennews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. I did drop my video from the March for Life. It's like 3 minutes long. I did post it on my Facebook and I did post it on my YouTube. Actually, just saw a very nice comment from someone. They said it was very professional looking. Thank you very much. So please go ahead and watch it. It'll just take 3 minutes and 15 seconds of your time. And please go ahead and share it. As I have already discussed, I felt that it was a very encouraging experience because it was nice to see so many young people who are informed and passionate about defending life, because there's so many people out there who just say awful things, do awful things. They ignore the science. So many people use hypotheticals to justify abortion. It's insane. It's like their go-to kind of thing, actually. They'd rather talk hypotheticals than answer questions like, where do you think life begins? And why don't you think a fetus is human? So there's even been like a trend on TikTok where girls would post pictures of them in abortion clinics. Now, actually, someone from Shout Your Abortion movement, it came out that I guess she was actually paying some girls to do that, and people know that that's a good way to get instant fame. So some girls are just at their doctor's appointment and they post something about going to an abortion just to get people upset or get like super hyper leftist writing to them or boosting their stuff. It's pretty sick, but all those things that you see can kind of weigh on you a bit. So it was a really good experience, me personally being there. And so I, told my story, my experience being there. So go ahead and watch the video and please share it to different places so people can see that there's other people out there willing to fight and defend life. One of the people that I interviewed was actually someone who recognized me from TikTok. He's a black man. He's you see him, he's the only black guy that I guess I interviewed, put him in there. But I did ask him, I said, how do you feel about people who say that men shouldn't have a say in this debate? And he said, I would say it doesn't matter if I'm a man, evil is still evil. I'm like, yeah, that's a very good point. And he didn't have to sway me. I already knew that. But people want to just shut you down and people want to shut people down in this situation. People want to shut people down in Whoopi's kind of way that we're going to get back to. They just don't want you to have any kind of debate. They just want you to affirm what they say. And if you don't think like them, then they're going to shut you down whatever kind of way. So I was glad to see that there's plenty of people willing to stand up. And if you're someone who's believes those things, we're on the same wavelength, but you're, kind of too afraid to step out. I hope that you can go watch that video, or you continue watching Black Tea News, and you're encouraged to also speak up. So our country is not just overrun by crazy people. Because there's definitely an illusion of them coming in for the kill. So we got to make sure that they are not successful. So anyway, please go ahead and watch that video and share it around. Also, I would like to thank Brighter Michigan PAC. I am in the studio. Thank you to Brighter Michigan PAC. If you guys are triggered by anything I say today, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. I'm just using the space. So I'm grateful to them for uplifting conservative voices. I do enjoy being here, always, and not forever. Life will take me different places, I'm sure, but I do appreciate the Brighter Michigan PAC. And please check out merchandise that I have on the website as well. You guys have seen different things that I have. I'll have more things on the website. But also on a personal note, I am dropping a new book. You guys know, or at least have stated, I don't know if all of you know, that I do write books. So I have actually 14 published books, chapter books to like young adult, action adventures, coming of age, fantasy, contemporary fantasy, I guess. I don't have like high fantasy stuff. Paranormal romance, all sorts of things. And my book number 15 is a vampire YA. So that is my cover. So by the time tomorrow hits, it should be available for pre-order for Kindle. If you want a paperback, it won't be available until like the release date is Valentine's Day, so you can enjoy a nice new vampire story. And it's not like Twilight or anything. It's I think better than that. So you guys can check that out and support. And if you just like to read on Kindle, I'd appreciate it if you did get a pre-order when that drops, and I will make sure to remind you guys. So I haven't released one in a minute. I know that 15 is a lot, but it's been a minute for me since I've released one. So at least I didn't do one last year. So I'm happy. So I just wanted to share that news with you. So yay me. Also, I want to go ahead and show you guys my meme of the day. It's to do with the truckers. There's so many videos now of the truckers coming out that people are posting on social media. But you see, yay, the happy Canadians in their trucks and their signs. And they're all looking happy. And there's Trudeau being all upset with them. And he's in his blackface. Now, this is relevant because and Trudeau, he like fled from like the capital and stuff and is in an undisclosed location right now, FYI. But at least last I looked anyway. But he did apparently, they say, test positive for COVID, but I'm sure that's not why he fled. He's just doesn't want to deal with the people, and I don't think he's in any sort of danger or anything like that. And I don't think well, I don't know, these people are pretty hysterical, but he just doesn't want to deal with it. He wants people to shut up and obey. But Trudeau, well, actually, I still have this clip. I've played this for you guys before, but here he is.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Next question.
So anyway, he's like, this is a fringe group. He thinks they're awful and terrible because they won't just like accept the science. But what about their liberties? What about their freedoms? Like, I think that's still important. And they're pushing a hyper hysterical interpretation of the data, not one that's like practical in any sense of the word. So give these people their country back. And I'm glad these people are taking it back. There's people talking about it, which we covered a bit on Friday. The guest that I was going to have for Let's Talk About on Saturday, I'm going to have him this Saturday, and he is a Canadian conservative. So I am going to be very interested to have a conversation with him. He's been obviously following the situation very closely, and he's had to deal with some medical issues with them forcing the vaccine and other things. So he's going to be a very cool guest to have on. So this Saturday on Let's Talk About It, I encourage you to tune in. So on Saturday nights, I usually have a guest who's a TikToker, and we talk about different TikToks and stuff. So we'll be talking about, you know, the truckers. We'll talk about COVID and a bunch of other things and things that are funny, humorous, and so on. But if you got your Saturday night free at 7:30, go ahead and tune in, because it'll be interesting. And he'll have a lot to say on the trucker stuff. So let's jump into it. The first thing I want to talk about before we get to the Whoopi thing is this video that came out. Fox News interviewed a Biden supporter, and he had some choice words. And I think the video is pretty fascinating. I'm also really baffled. And I've already shared this on my Facebook page, so maybe some of you have seen it. I'm going to go ahead and share it with you guys, and we'll watch it together. But it is like bizarre to me, because everything he says that he pretty much has a problem with Biden with are things that he should have known, are things that everyone should have known. So I'm glad there's people waking up, and politically it's, you know, I'm team red, you know, I'm like, it's good for our side that there's people waking up, but I'm still like grieved in a way that people allowed themselves not to know. So it's very bizarre. It's very bizarre, but let's watch this together.
To Biden. I supported Kamala Harris from day one. I even starred in Biden's victory video. I was in it. I did more in the 2020 election to actively work for someone's campaign my entire life, for any candidate whatsoever. A year in, I'm discussing with them both. I have been a consistent Democratic voter for 16 years. I voted for Biden thinking that he was the safest choice. But before I started supporting Biden, I was a Kamala Harris supporter. But Biden, I'm furious at. What do I not like? Day one turned Title VII and Title IX inside out. You want to know why you have Leah Thomas, that man swimming in competing against women? That's why. Gender identity. If I had known Biden was this much of a genderist, there's no way I would have voted for that man. I am upset about the Afghanistan withdrawal. The video of refugees dropping from C-117 to their deaths will haunt this presidency and will haunt this country for decades to come. I don't like critical race theory. Critical race theory is a Trojan horse that has a lot of darker elements hiding inside, like the diversity, equity, and inclusion movement. I don't like the idea of kids, black kids, white kids, whatever, separated by race and then made to feel like one group is oppressed and the other group is not. I don't like where we are now with COVID. Masks don't work. CDC said so in May of 2020. Omicron is a weak variant. Everyone knows that. Still trying to enforce this kind of stuff on people? Who's benefiting from this? I am seeing the Democratic Party, I'm seeing my party headed into the wrong direction. Joe Biden going into these dark realms, making all of this stuff has no place in schools, that has no place in society. That is how the party destroys itself. That is how liberals become so far over to the left that they become completely unrecognizable from what they used to be. And I'm pissed about it. Democrats need you to listen to me carefully. The fact that I, a registered Democrat, am appearing on Fox News, I don't have a grift, I don't have a thing, I don't have a gimmick, I don't have a brand. And the fact that I, a blue-collar Democratic worker, am speaking to Fox News should scare you and scare the rest of our party. The fact that they're willing to talk to me and MSNBC and CNN are not, that is a problem. And that should tell you all how far we've fallen away from the common man.
So that could not have been better unless it was written. It could have been written by a Republican. So what's puzzling to me is I'm like, this why is this man a Democrat? And I understand their party wasn't as extreme as it is today. But the direction that it's been headed in for a while is pretty obvious to me. And I don't understand how you could not have known. Now, for him to say, well, I voted for Biden, I thought he was the safe choice. I understand people thinking that, but in a lot of ways, Biden was, he's always someone who's been swayable and is trying to kind of gone on trend, and he's done things to keep himself in the eye, like the whole situation with Clarence Thomas and stuff. That was being that mean, and then the borking in the past, being that mean to like Supreme Court justices and stuff. That wasn't like a normal thing. Like, people would usually vote for you if you met the qualifications, and then it became like all these sort of like petty sort of tests, and they threw such dirt out in the open with Clarence Thomas. So it's really interesting now that he's like, we got to get a black woman. I'm like, but the Clarence Thomas, dude, we did not forget how you treated that man. Like, I will never give you kudos just because you announced this, because you obviously, if Biden had any self-respect, he would have just appointed a black woman without announcing, I'm going to appoint a black woman. Because he does it for the kudos. It's not to be virtuous. It's not to be virtuous at all. Not in the least bit. Not for progress. It's for kudos. Okay? So what should have really tipped people off that Biden wasn't going to be this moderate is who he hired for his campaign. Now, I didn't keep up with everyone he was hiring for his campaign, but I did notice he hired Simone Sanders. And Simone Sanders worked for Bernie Sanders. And Simone Sanders was on CNN after Trump was elected, and there were people like attacking white people who were MAGA and stuff. There was somebody who was beaten like in the street and like dragged out of their car, and they were like dragging on the car. They were trying to steal it or something like that. And CNN was doing a segment, and some guy was talking. There was a pro like Trump person talking about how these people were attacked, and she's like, "Oh, poor white people." And I'm like, dude, they were attacked. And she's like, stop it. I'm like, just because they're white doesn't make them less of a victim. It doesn't make them less of a victim of a hate crime. Sorry. And she also said they were doing, the DNC was going to pick their new people. She was like, we don't need a white person in charge of the Democrat Party right now. So to me, she seems like a pretty racist person. I don't like to throw that word around, but she's definitely said some racially charged things. And I'm like, if this is like the direction that Biden is willing to go, because they could have picked a lot of, seasoned sort of people to help run and she's seasoned in her way, but like people were going to, who had a more moderate view of how things should be. That's who they would have picked. But they're like, this is the aggressive, excited base that we're trying to capture. And I don't know how she presented herself when she pitched it, or who, if they approached her. I don't know how the hiring process worked. But I just noticed that when she was on the roster, I'm like, this isn't going to go well. That was my interpretation of the events. Okay. Another really big red flag to people during the campaign was when Biden all of a sudden flipped on the Hyde Amendment. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Hyde Amendment is, the Hyde Amendment is supposed to keep federal dollars from funding abortion. Okay? So it used to be, when you get into discussions about pro-life, pro-choice, people would say, like, well, there's no your funds aren't funding abortion. Now they'll be like, yeah, you should fund it because women need it, and especially women of color. And it's like, whoa. It's like, do you know what you're saying? So anyway, it's switched to this position where we absolutely should be paying it for, because it's moral good for these people. Abortion is love. So it's come a long way from like safe, legal, and rare. So Bernie Sanders and other people were like, yeah, we should get rid of the Hyde Amendment. And at first Biden was like, his team was like, no, he's for the Hyde Amendment. You know, he's Catholic. This is a very strong belief. He's held this belief for a very long time. And then Twitter just went crazy. And you have to remember, not everyone, when you're online, that is not always a good representation of the country, of even your party. Not everyone who even tweets about American politics is American. And they're certainly not all voters. And some of them may be 14 commenting on all these things, depending on what app you are. So, and some of them are bots. So keep that in perspective. And Biden and his team should have really kept that in perspective. But there's all these people tweeting these things about Biden. They're all angry because he's for the Hyde Amendment. So all of a sudden, Biden changed this alleged not lifelong, but such a long-held opinion on how our taxpayer dollars shouldn't be funding abortion, because that's something that's so emotionally charged from Americans. And the least you could do if abortion has to be legal is not use like some person who's a Sunday school teacher, have her taxpayer dollars go to fund something like that. And so all of a sudden Biden switched. And after he had people go on Sunday shows saying, explaining it, all of a sudden he switched. So then next time he's on the debate stage with him and Bernie Sanders, it's just him and Bernie left, right? And then Bernie's like, well, you were for the Hyde Amendment. He's like, everybody voted for the Hyde Amendment because you couldn't pass a bill if it wasn't tied in there. So that was his position. And that's what he was explaining. It was no longer a super held long belief. He was bullied right off of his alleged Catholic position, or his alleged position that was considerate to millions of Americans who don't want their dollars funding abortion. All of a sudden, just gone. So this deeply held religious view and this moral conviction and this respect for all these voters could just disappear because a Twitter audience got angry. And I'm sure he heard it from other places, but if he had like some other perspective out there, there was a lot of people who would at least say in the past, well, our funds aren't funding abortion. So every time I have a conversation with people who are like, well, abortion, that's none of your business, I'm like, are you sure about that? Because you're pretty much trying to make me pay for them. You're trying to make me pay for them. As a matter of fact, that's why I have one of these shirts now. My money, my business. You can get that on blacktnews.com. It got them in a couple different colors, but that's why I made this shirt. Because they make it your business when they demand your tax dollars. It's not between a woman and her doctor when you want my dollars involved. Okay? And there are more reasons why I believe it's everybody's business, but that's a big one. That's a big one. And they also introduced like a bill that didn't have Hyde Amendment protections in it. So they're trying to affirm that. So I knew that Biden was not going to be this middle of the road guy because he didn't have some sort of principles that he really, really wanted to stand on, at least none that weren't up for grabs for a vote. Okay? So people should have really been able to see how he was on the campaign trail, especially if you're trying to pay attention. Now, this guy, I don't know how informed of a voter he was. He says he was involved, but I don't know how informed he was, because the things he said were super obvious to me. Now you may be thinking, well, who could have guessed that Biden would be such a genderist, as he put it? Who could have guessed that? I mean, if you just kind of looked at like their campaign websites and things that their surrogates would say, where he would pop into different people's lives and other stuff like that, I don't know how you couldn't assess that him, or at least the people he was having in his circle, wouldn't indicate that that would be what he was pushing. And he talked about like Title 7 and Title 9, and first day one, when he was, started putting out executive orders, the Biden administration put down an executive order. The order was 13988, preventing the combating discrimination of the basis of gender, ideology, and sexual orientation. This is from nationallawreview.com. Expands prohibited forms of sex discrimination under Title 9 of the Education Amendments of the 1972 and Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to include discrimination on the basis of gender, ideology, and sexual orientation. So, I mean, and you can say that's all good and stuff, but he mentioned like that's why you got cases like the male swimmer, biological male, competed as a biological male. Now he's competing against women and decimating them, beating them up by like 40 seconds. That is no small feat. Allegedly, is like, oh, this is so easy, makes comments like that. And there's girls crying in the locker room. They're devastated because they know it's unfair, and they're told to like be quiet about it. All those girls, I understand they're in a tough spot, but they all got to stand up and do something. All girls, all of them. No one should be competing with this dude. And he was beaten by a biological girl who is transitioning into a boy. But there was girls who alleged that they think that they set that up because they said he swims faster than he normally does. So there was people, as soon as like this started coming out and Biden started pushing some stuff, they're like, oh shoot, this isn't what I voted for. It is what you voted for. You just weren't paying attention to what you were voting for. You just weren't. As a matter of fact, if any of you watching gave money to like BLM and stuff, the dismantling cisgender privilege, that was actually on their What We're About page. This is an example of dismantling cisgender privilege. That's the kind of stuff that you like financially affirmed if you gave to BLM, the organization. And by the way, tune in tomorrow and grab a friend, because a lot of stuff came out of BLM in the past week. And there was a really juicy article about this data analyst who got fired for presenting how BLM's ideology has really actually hurt and even got people killed. And he was fired for the data. So we're gonna talk about that, and some of the dollars are missing. So tomorrow we're gonna be all up in BLM's business. So tomorrow is gonna be a hot tamale sort of day. So we're excited about tomorrow. But back to this Democrat voter. I'm really baffled. He's talking about critical race theory. I have said this before. We covered it a lot on this show. It's not smart for the Democrats to continue to push this, but they push it because Republicans are against it, and it's hyped up Republicans. If everybody would just kind of stand up and say, no, this isn't good, the issue could disappear if everybody would just lock arms and kind of just stamp it out. But there's a fraction. I don't believe there's so many Democrats who don't even know what it is. And I've talked to Democrat leadership in this state who do not know what it is and have admitted it to me, but they will defend it nonetheless because that's politically what they've decided to do. And it doesn't make sense, but they believe Republicans are bad, Republicans are racist, and that's good enough reason to just keep pushing something that actually is racist and affirming a lot of bad ideologies. So Democrats are, if you look at polls about it, more Democrats than Republicans are supporting it, of course. But if you look at different races, everybody's pretty much against it except for Black people. But I promise you, as more people begin to actually analyze what it is, people will say, this isn't right. This isn't right. So he was someone already there on that train, or at least is on that train now. So as he's talking about all the things he doesn't like about the Democrat Party, his party, if that's how he feels, I think his party left him a while ago. At least the mainstream direction of it, anyway. And he could I don't know what issues he really has with Republicans, but we could probably just lock arms and embrace on everything he named they had a problem with. That's kind of enough right now. Plus lower taxes. Doesn't that sound dandy? So I don't understand how this man, he says he's been a Democrat, voting Democrat for the past 16 years. So I'm confused. I'm confused. Was it just solely he hated Trump so much that he deluded himself and voted for Biden? Because Charlemagne said the other day, he's like, where's Trump? And I was going to play that clip for you guys, but he swore a lot in it. So I was like, too many F-bombs. And I didn't have time to bleep everything. And I do have a censor button, but I'm not good at the censor button. But he said, at least we know where we stand with Trump. Now, I think Charlemagne's he's kind of full of crap. Because I'm like, dude, Joe Biden looked you dead in your eye and said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. So I'm like, if you wanted to hold Biden accountable, you could get it on election day, sir. So it's kind of late to be like, where's Trump? Where's Trump? Okay? So you can take what he said with a grain of salt. But other people have kind of felt like that. At least we knew where we stood. There's this big TikToker called Consciously. He said that he knew Joe Biden was lying, but they voted for him to get rid of Trump. And I'm like, why'd you vote for the liar? Because was Trump really so bad that it's worth it right now? Now, of course, hindsight is 2020. And I don't know who could have predicted things would be as bad as they are right now. Okay? Even people who didn't like Biden are like, I'm surprised how bad things are now. But things were pretty good pre-pandemic. And a lot of things that were really bad were people pushing them to be really bad for politics. For politics. Trump kept saying, we don't want the cure to be worse than the disease. We got there. We got there hard and fast. Hard and fast. So it's pretty crazy. I don't understand what this man was thinking. And I know he's not alone. Because I have heard other people saying, man, if I knew they're going to push all this gender stuff. And that was before like the Leah Thomas and just other things that happened early last year. People being like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like that. Even if you looked at some of the people that they interviewed, they were trying to really go for the entertainment right rather than substance, because they wanted to get the young base enthused that are very progressive, who are so attached to these social issues. But the older, like blue collar Dems who just want to put like food on their table, take care of their families, and they still have like a bit of social compassion, but it's not like, dude, I don't want a dingling in the locker room with my daughter. Like, they're not that woke. They're not into all the stuff of the loud carnival barkers that are in their party. So they're very tone deaf right now. Even like, and I've explained this a lot with the critical race theory thing, because I went to a Democrat Party picnic. They didn't know I was a Republican. And I talked to the county chair about critical race theory. I mean, this just lets you know how tone deaf they are. I'm a Black woman trying to explain my concerns about critical race theory. They don't know anything about it. They admitted to me. She admitted to me that she hadn't looked much up into it. So she doesn't know about it. This white woman admitted to me that she didn't know about critical race theory. Me, a Black woman who, as far as she knows, is a Democrat, is saying, hey, there's some bad stuff in here. And she's like, well, these parents who go to these PTA meetings, they're racist. I've seen into their eyes, the depths of their soul. Is that all they have, this emotional jargon? And I understand it's good enough for a lot of people, and it's worked for a lot of people, but that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable, especially from someone who's supposed to be party leadership. If that's the best you got. And this isn't like a teeny tiny county she was representing. We're talking about the Oakland County chair. So I know this man isn't alone. I know this man isn't alone. One of the most popular articles, actually I think it was my most popular article on my website in Black Tea News. I think it's my second most popular article, but I wrote an article about Biden remorse. And that was like very early on. And I have to do a part 2, I guess, an updated one. But people were upset about the pipelines that he decided he was going to close down. And there were unions that were upset and wrote letters like, oh my gosh. But they came out and supported Biden, even though there was like multiple videos of him explaining that what he was going to do. And I saw tweets of people like saying stuff like, oh my gosh, someone texted me and said that my dad was going to lose their job because of me, or their dad was going to lose their job because of me. Is that true? Or because they voted Biden? And it's like, did you not realize that your vote is not something to take so lightly, that it has real world consequences? And I understand people were very upset about Trump and COVID. But if people are kind of honest about how viruses work, and they looked at the data, and we had honest conversations about what age bracket, how many comorbidities you have to have, and if people died from COVID or with COVID, I think I don't know, he'd probably still be president. But they were telling you that he was telling people drink bleach, because they wanted you to think he was that erratic and crazy, and it was too great of a risk for him to continue being president. And now they're like, oh, look, we've created so many jobs, more than any modern president. Biden is so amazing. As if y'all didn't make a recession happen, as if you didn't make people lose jobs, as if you didn't keep them off their jobs by incentivizing them not to work, and as if the funds didn't run out and everybody's trying to run out and get a job, if it's still that important to them. We're just going to pretend all that didn't happen. They are. I reshared a video the other day. If you go through my Facebook page, you'll find it pretty recently. But during the election, I made a video being like, do you guys remember how things were? And I played some videos of how awesome the economy was, and people being concerned because the economy was so good, because Trump was going to be reelected because the economy was too good. At the end of the day, people want to make sure there's food on their table for their families. So Democrats were concerned. Bill Maher was like, if we have a recession, Trump won't get reelected. Oh gosh, I wonder what he thinks about that's the sort of talking points now. Okay. Well, the economy did poorly, obviously, because they made a recession happen. And you had Governor Whitmer, Newsom, and other people talking about how COVID's an opportunity, or politics and stuff still matter. And a lot of people ran the COVID situation because of politics. A lot of the policies they made didn't make sense, but the politics behind them did. And so now right now in the present, they made you lose your business, made you lose your jobs. And Biden is now the hero who gets to say, I created more jobs than any president. The GDP is great. The growth is just fantastic. I made the price of gas go down 2 cents after it went up by like $1 and something, Joe. They killed your businesses. They killed your livelihoods. They killed people's dreams for a narrative. It doesn't feel like justice that this man is in the White House, but it is what it is right now. And I only hope that there's more men who are willing to wake up and not reward these crazy people pushing all this insidiously crazy thing. He also mentioned Afghanistan, and I've seen some people try to rationalize that really hard online, but a lot of those people are, like on TikTok, for example, but a lot of those people are grifters, and a lot of those people want clicks, and they have a brand. And I mean, everybody's got a brand, I guess, but people will say just incendiary things for clicks because that will in comments, because that will equal dollars for them. There's even been some big creators who've been caught admitting as much. So they may try to support Biden. A lot of them will have the talking point, well, Biden's not great, but he's better than Trump. I don't know how. I guess there's still time to say, well, maybe he'll get there. He's not. Just spoiler alert. He won't. But they even try to justify Afghanistan. They even had a talking point like, these people who are upset about the 13, they don't really care about veterans. I'm like, what about the veterans I know who served in Afghanistan who are upset? They don't care about troops? Okay. You sound a little crazy. But again, those people are grifters. But blue-collar Democrats like him, who watch the news and then watch Joe Biden be angry when people would address him about it, that wasn't a good look. Wasn't a good look. And then when he's talking about the tragedy of that and then relates it back to his son, and then he repeats that to the Gold Star families, and they're just like, my kid is dead because of decisions you made, and you would talk about your kid? Meghan McCain, she tweeted out, like, this isn't the Joe Biden I know. The guy who showed her compassion after her father died, she's like, I don't recognize this man. Now, I understand from her perspective why she would see a different Joe, but I don't know why this Joe wasn't visible to her or to anyone. I hate to say it, I don't want to say I hate to say it, but I told you so. I guess we all feel like I told you so. And there's a lot of people who are like, come on, it's, just come over. It's fine. Like, don't give people a hard time. I don't want to give people a hard time, but it's not like the evidence was hidden from you. It's not like it wasn't apparent. It's not like, and Biden isn't some, like, Trump, people who took a risk on Trump in 2016, that was a risk. Because he didn't have any kind of other office. You're going off of, like, maybe what he was promising, maybe some things you knew about how he ran his business or personality types and stuff like that. But people took a risk on him, even people who claimed that they were sure. It was still a risk, in my opinion. Biden is, you know him. He said Afghanistan wasn't going to be the fall of Saigon. He was there at the fall of Saigon. That's how long he's been involved in government politics. He's very old. And not just old, he is the swamp. He is the swamp thing. So there was ample evidence to know who Biden was. But people just think they've been a long time Democrat, and Biden's been a long time Democrat, and maybe they share the same sort of moderate roots. That's not Biden's story, and it hasn't been, and it's not. So, fascinating video. Very fascinating. I know he's not alone. and I hope other people speak out. I've seen a lot of people speak out. But as he said, he doesn't have a grift or a brand or something. There's people who say stuff on TikTok. Some of them have a brand, or they're trying to build one. He was just a guy who went on and said this should alarm people, and I hope it is an alarming for Democrats, and I think it's good news for Republicans. I wish we didn't have to get to this state that we are in for people to wake up. But I hope we can start holding some of these people accountable, and I hope it's not just talk. Let's move on to The View, guys. Let's move on to The View. Okay, so first off, there's this book called Moss, and as someone pointed out in the comments, it is a top-selling Amazon book now because it's in the news. But it was pulled from a Tennessee school eighth grade curriculum, because apparently the parents were talking about it, and they thought it was a little too graphic. And I don't think that's necessarily terrible. And they're talking about like there's nudity and some bad language and stuff. Now, Joy Reid had an opinion that they're just saying that and they don't really want people to learn about this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like it's code, like a cover up. I just want to say that parents are not always consistent, because they also make the point that parents have their kids watch other things. You know, I'm just going to play the video and we'll do commentary. I'm not going to jump ahead of myself.
Tennessee school pulled the graphic novel Mouse out of their lessons on the Holocaust because it contained some nudity and some bad language. Personally, I'm shocked because, you know, given the story of Mouse, I'm surprised that that's what made you uncomfortable.
I wonder how many of these people on the panel have, now maybe they read it because of show prep. But sometimes they do have people on the show and they bring their books and there's discussions and they just have notes about it, but they don't actually read things. So I wonder how many people have read it. I've already admitted to you guys that I haven't read it, and that's not something that, I don't know how old it is. Well, we didn't read it in when I was in the 8th grade, and I don't know how old it is. It probably wasn't even out when I was in 8th grade. I'm not sure. We read like Diary of Anne Frank. You know, I think that's a little more home run as far as if you want to read a book about the Holocaust. But their commentary is a little weird.
The fact that there was some nudity, and I mean, it's about the Holocaust, the killing of 6 million people, but that didn't bother you. But
okay, so there's a difference between like history and still learning about history and the reality of history, and then people still being exposed to like nudity, and it's like, just because something is like super obviously the reality situation is really terrible, but if parents don't like their kids to hear swearing and stuff like that and nudity, that doesn't sound crazy to me, because that's the kind of house I grew up in. That's the kind of house that I grew up in. Parents are not always consistent, but that doesn't mean that they're not trying to do what's in the best interest of their children. And it is still up to like the parental discretion on what their children watch and read and learn about and whatnot. Okay. I would watch those stuff with a lot of violence in it, but we, you know, but my mom used to like record stuff off of the TV. If you guys can remember VCRs and videotapes and stuff. And there were like movies that I didn't know were missing parts until I got older, because she would edit them herself, like something, oh, there's going to be some kind of scene here, pause, like not going to record that, and there'd just be edits of the film missing. I remember when Swordfish came out and Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry were in that film, and this was after X-Men. I'm like, we love Hugh Jackman because he's Wolverine and stuff. And they're like, and we're like, can we go see that film? And I don't know what else he was a hacker or something. And then I suppose it's probably rated R, so there's bad language and stuff in it. But they're like, nope, you can't see that film. there's boobs in that. Like, so you can think that's silly, but parents are parents, and they feel the way that they feel. I went to CCS. It's a College for Creative Studies, at least for a semester anyway. And I took a drawing class, and we did real forms and still lifes and stuff like that. And so there was a segment when we started having models to draw models, and at first they'd have, we did like 2 women, I think, and then one day a man was waiting for me. And he was very expressive, and it was the first time I saw a man's dingling in real life. And when I told my dad that, he was so upset. I'm in college. I'm a grown woman, and it's not trying to be sexual. They're just trying to show the human form, and you need to see things, I guess, to understand how to draw them. And he's like, that's still not right. She could have had underwear. Maybe he's correct, but that's what they decided to do. And I went to an art school. But my dad was spitting bullets. He was upset because he's still a dad, okay? So whether you think that's silly or not, and trying to laugh like, oh, there's nudity and stuff like that, please, like, stop. Like, parents still have discretion, and they can decide what's right and wrong for their kids. And you can think it's silly, but it's reality. I don't know what world you live in, but parents want to shield their kids from some things, even though you may not think it's entirely consistent. Okay.
The naked.
I'm not sure that they don't use the naked part as a kind of a canard to throw you off from the fact that they don't like history that makes white people look bad.
Well, this is white people doing it to white people.
Yeah.
So this is, y'all go fight amongst yourselves, but don't,
Well, and look at what kids watch these days and the music they listen to say that when proving or showing them a work of history or art or something that happened is...
Again, she just mentioned the type of music that kids listen to. My parents wouldn't we weren't allowed to listen to secular music. We were like a church household, Again, we'd see movies. I saw The Patriot. That was pretty bloody and violent, But like, would we ever be allowed to listen to something like Cardi B? Of course not. So just because your kids are listening to something that's probably not appropriate for their age, in my parents' opinion, doesn't mean that everybody's doing it. So you are in a school. The school doesn't get to go, you know what, there's a lot of people listening to Lil Nas. So, let's watch him, get down and dirty with Satan, Schools don't do that. Parents don't grant the schools that type of discretion and a little YOLO mentality because other kids are doing it. So this is not, like, I understand their point, but it doesn't hit home, If there was books that were pretty graphic in school when I was there and we were reading it for an assignment or something, I just know my parents would be like, okay. So I can't assume that there's any other reason that they got rid of Mouse other than what they actually discussed. But they're going to allege that it's for other reasons.
Bad language or nudity, turn off reality TV, turn off the radio, turn off everything they're doing, because kids are exposed to this stuff really early. Again,
like, we weren't allowed to watch Real World. Like, I think, like, maybe my older sibling or whatever would sneak it at time and time. Even when we would watch all that, we would, like, have to turn off the end when the musical guests would come on, okay? So not all kids just have the liberty to just live whatever life because every other kid out there that is doing that. So when they send their kids to school, they do expect particular standards to be there, okay? That's what the parents expect. They don't expect for their kids to get on the bus and then to be hearing like the most ratcheted station ever. As a matter of fact, I was one of the kids who's like, there was like some bad language like station that was really bad. There was a song called Crazy Bee, and I was like, that ain't appropriate. I told my dad. He called the bus station, and they were like, we can't listen to this stuff anymore. I'm sitting there like, like, I'm one of those people. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So
in inappropriate situations, not ones where you're learning or teaching.
Yeah.
So that's the first clip. Now let's get into the crazy one. The crazy one.
Also, if you're going to do this, then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race.
What? So this is what's making people very upset. So let's watch how this evolves.
No, it's not about race.
No, for someone agreed with her, like, no, and they're like, what?
It's about
a different race,
but it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
So before we go on, I'm just gonna go ahead and read the Ben Shapiro thread about this, because he's pretty, at least his tweets read like they're pretty upset. He used explicit language in them. Whoopi Goldberg explaining that the Holocaust wasn't about race because these were two groups of white people isn't just insipid, it's insidious. It's downplaying the minority status of Jews in order to uphold bleep intersectional arguments that justify anti-Semitism today. The intersectional argument is that Jews are white people and that Jews disproportionately successful thanks to white supremacy, because racism is animus plus power, and Jews are powerful because they are white. Anti-Semitism from non-white supremacists isn't bigotry. The logic is why the left will condemn anti-Semitic attacks like the one at the Tree of Life, but quickly memory hole anti-Semitic attacks by Black Hebrew Israelites in New Jersey or radical Muslims in Texas. The logic is also why the left will embrace and or justify radical Islamists who wish to destroy the state of Israel rather than siding with liberal democracy that includes a significant Muslim minority. Anti-Semitism in this theory is only present when it springs from actual white supremacists. Other acts of anti-Semitism are just a reflection of the dispossessed lashing out against those who have more institutional power. The attempt to abstract from the causes of the Holocaust, from Jew hatred to man's humanity to man, is actually a way of obscuring and covering for anti-Semitism. And he makes a point because like when there were like white supremacists attacking, Jews, it's obviously it's evil and it's bad. Everyone's on board with that. But when there was a recent attack at a synagogue in Texas, which he mentioned, and Biden's like, they saw all this stuff. They were at the synagogue and did X, Y, Z, and everything. Everything was obviously pointing to anti-Semitism. We're like, well, we just there's just not enough information. It's like, are you sure there's not, Joe? Are you sure? So he makes a grand point. He makes a grand point there. And it's just gonna get worse from here.
That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy. It's about
but it's not about
ideal race.
But these are two white groups of people.
Well, how do we have to black people
see them as white?
But you're missing the point. You're missing the point. The minute you turn it into race, it goes down this alley.
So what? Okay, so here's what's very inconsistent about this. If you're just going to paint it as man's inhumanity to other men, why do we need to have any discussion about racism? Because race isn't actually that big of a deal, and there are tribes who will treat each other badly. There's black people who treat other black people badly. Like if you don't fit into their box of ideology, you have black liberals who will come for black conservatives and call them an Uncle Tom and so on. And Nicole Hannah-Jones say, well, there's a difference between being ethnically black and politically black. They'll say all these sort of things. Michael Eric Dyson will say it's a a black mouth is moving, but white supremacist ideas are coming out. They can say all those sort of awful things. Joy Reid can say awful things. All these people can say awful things to people who don't think like them. And that's okay. So there's all sorts of groups who will be inhumane to each other whether it's white on white or white against black and so on. All that is, we're all humans. So if you want to talk about man's inhumanity to each other, why are we having any discussions about race at all? If that's the way you want to paint it, but you're painting it this way because they're Jewish, and I don't understand. I don't understand why Whoopi would say this. And all the Ben Shapiro stuff that he's saying makes sense. But is Whoopi that far down the rabbit hole that she would just say that and assume that? Like, how many books has she read to radicalize herself? Is she that far down the rabbit hole? Because what Ben is saying is, I believe, spot on. But is Whoopi Goldberg at that point where she's this insidious? I don't know. I don't know. But the conversation, like, you can see people like pushing back on her.
Let's talk about it for what it is. It's how people treat each other. It's a problem. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, because black, white, Jews, everybody eats each other. So if you're uncomfortable, if you hear about mouse, should you be worried? Should your child say, oh my God, I wonder if that's me? No, that's not what they're gonna say. They're gonna say, I don't wanna be like that.
Well, hopefully.
I don't want to be cruel.
Yeah,
and
most kids, they don't want to be cruel.
No, they don't.
And we're living in an era where people are comparing vaccine cards to the yellow stars, where people are comparing vaccinations to what Anne Frank went through.
Yeah.
So it is necessary for kids to learn about the Holocaust.
And people do want to learn about the Holocaust, and that's something that hasn't changed and that's been going on for a long time. And people are so triggered when you make any sort of comparison. People aren't saying that vaccine treatment is as bad as that happened, but people are concerned when there's a mindset about humanity being cruel to humanity for reasons, and when you start segregating people, and when the sort of high that people can get when they treat each other cruelly, when they have the okay of the government. So those are the sort of things that people do make comparisons to. And but people learning about the Holocaust and Hitler and stuff, I guess it would be nice if people learned about those things so they would know that Trump wasn't Hitler or an orange Hitler or even a dictator. So it's funny, I mean, when they start playing the music, because clearly they're like, we got to wrap it up. We got to go. This is going left really quick. And you could see them trying to like change the conversation. So very interesting stuff. So I thought Ben's thread was very good on it. But if Whoopi's just going to define like it's about humanity, treating humanity cruel, badly, why don't we phrase that? I guess everything about that, because people will use race as an excuse to basically do that. People will use race to justify the actions that they have against one another. They'll rationalize all sorts of evil for what's best for them. And if they have to paint you as some kind of villain, which people painted Jews as a villain, as that is the reason what's wrong with our society, it's the Jews. But to just pretend like it's just white on white crime, as if it's not some kind of ethnicity. Someone did have a pretty funny tweet under Ben's thread, and he said, does that mean white Jesus is a thing? Because obviously, if all these Jews were white, if all Jews are white, doesn't that mean that Jesus is white then? Because the left was pretty obsessed with pointing out that Jesus isn't white, because I guess not because I think they spiritually think it matters, because they think it will trigger white evangelicals if you mention that Jesus isn't white, which is like he's a Jew. But if you're just saying they're all white, then the joke is funny that like, oh, white Jesus is a thing then. Like it is a religion, but it is an ethnicity. I understand that people see someone fair skinned and they're like, that a lot of people go, well, that is a white person. Especially there's a lot of black people feel that way. If you are just a particular fair skin, they will just classify you as that regardless. So maybe that's where Whoopi is coming from. I don't know if she's as deep as the theory of Ben's thread here, but I did think it was good commentary. And the problem with intersectionality on a lot of levels. There was another book, as I said, that went down, To Kill a Mockingbird, and there was a school in Washington, well, school board, I guess, in Washington that decided that they were going to take it out because there was a blacktivist who didn't like that the author was white, didn't like that the perspective of the main character was from a little white girl's perspective, and that they should get something from black voices. And so this classic book that I read in school, I did read To Kill a Mockingbird. It was in 9th grade in our like honors 9 class. Did read this book. And it's been a classic American history kind of tale. And what's so bizarre to me is that, like in critical race theory and all this intersectionality stuff, and it's not just like in educational literature and stuff. If I've seen screenshots of people in trainings at work, and they'll keep saying, listen, affirm, listen, affirm, listen, affirm, as if a black person's perspective is more powerful than a white person's perspective, and it's more important than a white person's perspective. It's just different. When you just say, just listen and affirm and be less white, just listen and affirm, you are creating, I think, a hierarchy there, even though you don't believe that black people can be racist because they don't have the institutional power. But aren't you like creating an institutional power there when you're saying that their perspective, you have to just listen and affirm, like don't question that they can't ask questions? Because people can have whatever perspective they want, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. That doesn't mean it's the truth. That doesn't mean they're saying things rationally, especially when their emotions are high. When their emotions are high, there's a lot of people, their perspectives are skewed. They could tell you a story and you can be sitting there like, that's not how it happened at all. Or that was not like, or if they have some kind of argument or disagreement with you, they're like, that was not how I said it. That was not my intention. Like I was driving to church on Sunday, and I said something, and my sister like repeated it back, kind of. I'm like, I don't think I said it that aggressive, and then she was like, okay, wasn't that aggressive or whatever? And she would like repeat it in a way that of a phrase I said it, and then she would say it in a way that seemed more aggressive than the way that I meant. And so people have gotten used to me, I suppose, but you just because you view things from your perspective doesn't mean that it's accurate. So people just saying you need to listen and you need to affirm and not question people is weird. It's weird. And it's not helpful. It's not progressive. It's regressive. So you have this classic American book that is about justice, really. This is big story about, and forgive me, it's been a long time since I've read this book, but of course, Atticus Finch is defending a black man because there's this white woman who's lied about being raped by him. And there's a mob who basically, he's going through this trial, and there's a mob that's basically ready to kill this man. And he's just trying to get justice for him. And she's watching this all go down. It is not supposed to be in the black man's perspective. It's supposed to be in this child's, it's not even the perspective of Atticus. It's in the perspective of this little girl viewing these different perspectives of race and these people around her. Is that supposed to be from a black voice? If it was, she would write it. And then y'all still be mad because a white woman told the story. It's so weird. It's so weird to just exclude something like that because the person is white. And do we think that's really progressive? People can't even. What if someone lived from that era? What if it was just someone telling their perspective? Like, they're not allowed to do that. More people experience that time than just Black people. And there were plenty of people, this may shock some of you, there were people who didn't like racism, even though they were not Black. And even if maybe they did hold a bit of particular views, that didn't mean that they didn't want to stand up for justice and the rights of those people. There was actually a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird that came out some years ago, and it had some controversy because Scout was grown, and Atticus had some racial views a little bit, and you're like, what? But his role in To Kill a Mockingbird was to be fair, was justice, in spite of the mob rule. So we're letting actual racism get in the way of a really good story. At least I remember it being a good story. And people have repeatedly used it time and time again. It is an American classic. And then again, Jake Tapper tweeted this out on his page, and I think that's when it started to really kind of blow up, because this is a local story and stuff, but he just said another school board removing another book from the curriculum, To Kill a Mockingbird, will be removed from Wucalito, Washington School District's 9th grade English language arts class and required reading list. And so people were like, oh, those darn Republicans banning another book. Then a lot of people didn't click the link and see that this was a Black activist trying to silence the voice of a white woman because she didn't feel that it was the place of a white woman to write the story, to tell the story, and you can have other Black people affirming and teaching about the time. There are other themes and other lessons in this book than just racism bad. And there's other books out there that people read. I, read things like Watson's Go to Birmingham, and there's lots of other books that people read. But to get rid of To Kill a Mockingbird because you don't like white perspectives on things, it's just we're not going in a good direction. We're not going in a good direction. So I know what to tell you guys. Homeschool your kids. Homeschool your kids. Homeschool your kids. Anyway, that is all I have for you guys today. Went a little late, went a little long, but that's okay. Tomorrow, I am going to be talking about this juicy stuff from BLM that has come out. There's been some mismanagement of funds. People don't know quite what's going where. And then also there was this really interesting story about this guy who was hired to analyze data, and people didn't like his data because he realized that the BLM movement has caused a lot of harm and violence actually to Black Americans because of the views and the things they pushed, and lack of policing now, and just in a bunch of different reasons. But we'll go through the piece tomorrow. And he actually got fired because he wouldn't retract it and get rid of it. If you can't wait, Larry Elder went through it and had a good video. But I hope you come tomorrow for my commentary on it at 4 p.m. So make sure that you are here and that you grab a friend and some popcorn, because I do not like BLM. It is not a secret. It hasn't been a secret, and I've been talking about it. And I was very aggressive about it in 2020 when people were typing it in their hashtags and their profiles and stuff. And if I saw it anywhere, I was ready to pounce. And I know people thought it was annoying, and I didn't care, but I thought that they had a very destructive message. They have very destructive ideology. The women who were over it are trained Marxists, that came out of their own mouths. They had very destructive policies on their website, and that took forever for people to realize, and they eventually took it down. But a lot of people were persuaded, and then people shift the narrative to, well, I support the movement and not the group. Well, the movement is based on a narrative, and the narrative is also false. So I didn't buy that and let that slide either. So I was very vigilant about it, and I wouldn't let up, and I'm still not going to let up, because I don't mind telling you I told you so. And it's not really just to be vindictive, but I just want people to be informed about things, because I don't want it to happen again. I don't want there to be a next time. I don't want there to be a next time. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So make sure that you guys are tuning into that. Please make sure that you go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, TikTok, Getter, YouTube. Even if you like watching this on Facebook, please go follow on YouTube, because as more subscribers come, that I do get more benefits. So please go and subscribe and follow me on all the things. I have the links in the summary of the episode if you're watching. Well, you are watching. So make sure that you guys go into like the description, and all the links are pretty much there. Make sure that you go watch my pro-life video for the March to Life rally, and please share it. Like I said, it's like 3 minutes and something long. I do want to thank all the people who donated for me to go out there, especially our gold sponsor, the Michigan Conservative Coalition. And I did tag them in the pro-life video, so you guys can check them out and see what they're about. But I do appreciate it, and I appreciate that I was able to go. And I am also releasing a book on, for those of you who weren't here when I mentioned it, but my 15th book that I have written, well, not my 15th book that I've written, because I've actually written over 30, but I had a goal of writing 30 books by my 30th birthday. This will be the 15th book I have published. So this is a book I am releasing on Valentine's Day, and by tomorrow you'll be able to get a pre-order copy on Kindle. It will be cheaper if you pre-order it, so I am going to encourage you to get it for yourself and send it to people and so on. I'm thinking I would like to also do a event launch, and the event launch, if I do that, it'll probably be early March. And if so, I will let you guys know. And if anyone would like to come to like the book release, oh gosh, I just like hit my finger. That would be cool. And you are more than welcome to, but I will have to give you more info as I figure that out. But I'm excited because I didn't release one last year. So I'm glad to do it. It's a good book. I think it's a good book, and I think you guys will enjoy it, especially if you do like YA or know someone who likes YA. It's a very interesting book, and I will get into more details and have a little video that I will share with you guys at some other time. If you enjoy what I do here, though, please go to blacktnews.com/donate and leave a donation on the website. I appreciate you guys so much, everyone who has sponsored and donated and so on. But if you would like to continue supporting me here, please go to blacktnews.com/donate and consider leaving a gift, whether it's $10, $25, $50 or more. I would greatly appreciate it, and it's just going to help grow me here. And I've had a lot of growth since last year when I started doing these videos like pretty consistently, and I've just pretty much had a good run, a good steady growth, but we're looking to explode and add some more things to Black Tea News. So if you would like to be a part of that, I thank you, and I will see you guys tomorrow for the tea. It's gonna be good tea on Black Tea, so I'm excited. I'm already excited because I love trash and BLM, so we will be doing that. God bless.